Right guys, today is an episode of the best of the rest, so we'll get straight into it with Qatar versus Senegal. And Senegal won 3-1. It wasn't the most straightforward game for them ever though. They started off quite well. They were struggling to get the final pass right. There was a lack of quality in the final third from them throughout the game, but they were better with sort of like the fourth attacker coming from midfield with JG coming forward, which gave them a bit more of a threat, especially in the first half, as opposed to when they played a 4-3-3 with three defensively minded midfielders against Netherlands and lost 2-0. So they were better in this game, but they still sort of missed Mane a little bit in the final third because they weren't, getting the final pass right, getting enough shots on targets, that sort of thing. Qatar, they sat deep for most of the first half, keeping about 8 men behind the ball at pretty much all times. They were a little bit unlucky to not get a penalty. I think Senegal got away with one with Ismail Assar's challenge on, I think it was a thief, who was, it was a clumsy challenge from Sarr. I'm not wholly convinced it was a penalty because I do think a thief tried to steal it. No pun. But yeah, they on another day, another ref could have given that, to be completely honest. And Qatar did gift Senegal the opening goal. Bill Idea who scored it. It was, just poor defending really. Lazy, if anything, just stuck his leg out and basically said, finish this off. And he did. And that made it 1-0 to Senegal at half time. But second half, Senegal came out strong again. They got the second goal, which ultimately won the game for them through Jeju, and a brilliant header it was. But from then on, Qatar just decided, right, as it stands, we're going out of this tournament. Let's just be a bit more positive. Let's get a few men more, forward, just so the fans have something to cheer about or at least feel positive about. And They did. They got forward and they started creating a few chances here and there. Like Edouard Mendy actually had a few saves to make, which, from a Senegal point of view, is poor. But it just shows that if Qatar had, decided to be a little bit more positive, and they were starting to put a few passes together, which looked impossible in the Ecuador game at times. So fair play to them. They got their goal. It was Montari who scored it. And it was a really good header and a really good cross as well, especially the cross, brilliant first touch. And Montari did well to escape from his man and direct it into the bottom corner. But yeah, it just shows if Qatar had a little bit of a different mentality going into their games, then maybe it could have gone slightly differently. I don't think they'd have got out of this group, but at least maybe they'd have created a few more chances, possibly got another goal or something like that. But yeah, Mendy was definitely forced into a few big saves, and Qatar probably had the more better chances in the second half as well. The goal for Bamba Dieng's third for Senegal, which again put the game to bed after he came off of the bench. In fact, it was the two substitutes who combined to set it up. Iliman and Dai and Bamba Dieng who scored it. It was well worked cut back, and Dieng just slid it in really. And and Dai's definitely one to watch out for. I've made a video on him recently in my Next Generation series, and I think he's going to be a quality player, and I don't think it'll be too long until we see him in the Premier League, hopefully. But yeah, it was a well taken goal by Dieng. And after that goal, you could just see all the empty seats in Qatar's fan area, where it's just you gotta, at least applaud the second half performance. The football culture in Qatar is definitely not what it is in most other countries. If most other countries had gone to their first World Cup and been outclassed, but giving it a go in the second half of the final game, not the final game, but the final competitive game, then the fans would applaud it, and it maybe give them something to work on, like. And then in the other game in Group A, Netherlands and Ecuador played out a 1-1 draw in a game that didn't have tons of chances in it, but was still quite an interesting game to watch, I thought. It started off quite sharply with Costa Gakpo screamer, I think would be the correct word. It was a brilliant strike. And Holland, after they took the lead through that Gakpo goal, and it was a brilliant goal, they didn't really try to build on their lead. They just sort of said, right, we're happy with what we've got. We're gonna, just try and protect the lead we have rather than add to it. And that sort of worked against them, because Ecuador started the game far too negative. They changed the system from the Qatar game a little bit, and that's understandable, to be fair. I don't think it needed to be done, but I can understand it. You're expecting Netherlands to be a much higher level of opposition, which they are to Qatar. But Ecuador, I think if they'd have gone for it a bit earlier on, they could have won this game. And yeah, they did get the equaliser just before half time. Well, I say they thought they got their equaliser before half time. It should have been the equaliser before half time, because I think it was silly how the goal was disallowed, because the shot takes a deflection off Purvis Estupinian, and it's going in. The keeper's already dived, by the way, and it just goes past this one Ecuador player who is offside, but he's not really interfering with play. The whole point of it is he interfering with play? Is he blocking the keeper's view? And for me, he's not. The keeper can clearly see just round him. If you look when in a still image, when the ball takes a deflection off Estupinian, it's clear that he's already dived. He's not getting back up. He can't see. No, sorry, he can see the ball clearly, and there's nothing he's going to do about it. So for me, I think it was really harsh that goal was disallowed. I couldn't see why Depay doesn't start for the Netherlands, and I just think they're too negative. They've got quality. Why do they not try and do what they do in the qualifiers and try and win the games by 2 or 3 goals, which just seems bizarre to me, because they've got so much attacking talent, and especially defensive talent when that attack has gone forwards, like Virgil van Dijk, De Ligt, Ake, so many players. And second half, Ecuador did get their equaliser. This time it counted early on. It was just a follow-up from Enner Valencia, and his 3rd goal of the tournament. So I mean, he's having a decent tournament, although he did come off injured towards the end of the game, which is really unfortunate, because he does look like he's still got it in him, even about after 6 years of leaving the Premier League with Everton. So yeah, that's a bit of a downer for Ecuador, but they had shown signs of improvement, I think, even before the equaliser, where they started playing some good football, and yeah, they also thundered the bar by I think it was a shot by Plata, which cannoned off the bar and bounced out. So they were unlucky at times, Ecuador. It was a fairly even game, but I would say if anyone deserved to win it, it was probably Ecuador, because there weren't many big opportunities for the Netherlands after they got their goal in the 6th minute, which was at that point the earliest goal in the tournament so far. And they did start to lose their confidence after conceding as well. Just looking at my notes here. And yeah, they did have some good performers as well. Estupinian and Caicedo, the 2 Brighton lads, they played well, and so did Valencia. And yeah, I also thought the fact that there were so few subs until maybe the 70th or 75th minute in the game, it just allowed the second half to flow a bit more and maybe played into Ecuador's hands a little bit. And yeah, I think they could have easily won this game if they'd just started the game off a little bit more attack-minded rather than setting up to defend. But after 25 minutes or so, they decided, right, we're gonna try and get a few more men forwards, and it really did cause Netherlands a lot of problems. So if they'd have done that earlier on in the game, they could have got something out of this, something more out of this game than a draw, I personally believe anyway. And then in Group D, Australia beat Tunisia by a 1-0 in a game where Australia started the game really well, as they did against France, but they were able to maintain it this time. They got the opening goal through Mitchell Duke. It was a really well taken header. Did really well to readjust himself after the deflection from the cross and just sort of flick it with the back of his head and finds the far bottom corner. It was a really good header. A nice celebration, which his son joined in with in the crowd, which is always nice to see when a thing like that happens. And Tunisia, they were just too happy to let Australia sit and have the ball, all the possession for the first 20 minutes. And I think they just let Australia get too much momentum and confidence going forward in the first half, which eventually led to the goal. And Tunisia, the first 20 minutes of the game, they didn't do anything attacking wise. They didn't get forward. They didn't even get into the opposition box, I don't think. Really disappointing start for them, and they just weren't as feisty or as aggressive as in like their first game against Denmark. Yeah, it was Denmark, wasn't it? Except from Lyduni, but I think he might need therapy about something, to be honest. He's just absolutely mad. Brilliant first half performance from Australia though, and Tunisia in the second half, they came out a little bit more and tried to get more bodies forward. They probably had their best chance throughout the whole game, Tunisia, though, in the first half, right at the end, through Sakni, which he sort of wasted. But yeah, Australia, the second half, they made a couple of changes, just put two men up top to try and chase pretty much everything that came their way. Who was it? It was Hrustic and McLaren. Both substitutes. They stuck them up top, and let them chase pretty much everything that was like around the Tunisian defence. And Tunisia, even still, they struggled to create chances, even if they did have more of the ball and were set up higher up the pitch in the second half, because Australia defended so well. In particular, the one who I'd say was absolutely superb was Harry Souttar, who, I mean, has definitely put himself in the shop window for, I don't know, probably Premier League clubs at this point, because that was amazing, some of the stuff he was doing in this game. Like just blocks, tackles, interceptions, anything. He's definitely put himself in the shop window, I think, anyway. There were a few questionable decisions from Tunisia as well. I couldn't understand why you'd take Jabali off when in that Denmark game he was pretty much the heart of everything that they did attacking wise. So that I found a little bit confusing. They brought Wabi Kasri on, who, I mean, that's a name from the past, isn't it? I remember that goal he scored against Chelsea for Sunderland about coming up to 7 years ago now, when they had the great escape that season, but completely bottled it the next season, finishing last, I think. Australia, brilliant all-round performance, even if they didn't choose to do much attacking wise in the second half. They still got forward on a few occasions and whipped the ball into the box, but didn't really get any shots off. Leckie and Goodwin just ran their socks off for the team for pretty much the entire game, up and down, almost as wing backs in the second half rather than outside forwards, which they were in the first half and throughout most of this tournament so far. But yeah, it was a brilliant all-round game for them, and they have given themselves a chance now of getting through in this group, because in their next game against Denmark, I think if they get a draw and France beat Tunisia, that would mean that France finish on 9 points, Denmark would finish on 2 points, Tunisia would finish on 3 points, and Australia would finish on 4 points, which that'd be great for Australia. I think they made it to the round of 16 12 years, or it might have been 16 years ago, either Germany or South Africa. It might have been both. If they could do it again this tournament, that'd be a fantastic achievement for them. And to be honest, the way they've played, because even in the France game, that they were still quite good in that opening half an hour, that I can't say they don't deserve it, to be honest, because they do look like a half decent side, which no one gave a chance really. And then in Group C, Poland beat Saudi Arabia by 2-0 in a game where it was a good game to watch actually. It was chaotic at times. Early on, there were a fair few tasty challenges and a few yellow cards. I think a few yellow cards might be a bit of an understatement. I think there was like 4 in the opening 20 minutes. And Matty Cash, I thought in particular, was lucky to stay on the pitch with. He got a yellow card early on, and it was a correct decision to give a yellow for the challenge. And also, about 5 minutes later, elbowed a Saudi Arabian player in the head. And he sort of knew what he was doing. So for me, I think he was very lucky to stay on the pitch, in my opinion. And Saudi Arabia, they were a lot more attack-minded. They had a lot more possession in the opposition's half than Poland did in their half. But yeah, a lot more attack-minded than they were against Argentina, and understandably so, because Poland, although, I mean, they've got more points than Argentina, they're probably seen to be weaker than Argentina. And Poland were struggling to get the ball out of their own half at times in the opening half an hour, and the goal very much did come up against the runner play from Zielinski. It was a well-taken finish and good work from Lewandowski after he initially looked like he'd messed the chance up. But yeah, it showed maybe that Saudi Arabia are suited to playing on the counter-attack and letting the opposition have the ball more, because Poland had very little of the ball but got forward, almost played Saudi Arabia at their own game in what they did in the opening game. And yeah, Saudi Arabia, they continued to get forward there in the second half and got a penalty, correct decision, but a brilliant double save from Wojciech Szczesny. And it looked initially, after he made the double save, that the penalty was going to be retaken because his heel was slightly off his line, which would have been an absolutely disgraceful decision if it had, because on the replay it showed his heel is on the line. Nothing wrong. And yeah, if they'd have had that retaken, that would have been a shocking decision. But yeah, that just sort of gave Poland the boost they needed to maintain their high level of defending. They executed their game plan perfectly in the second half. Saudi Arabia kept up the pressure on them, but Poland still managed to create chances every now and again, hitting the post twice through Arkadiusz Milik and also Lewandowski. And yeah, Saudi Arabia, they proved themselves once again in this game to be a decent side. They played some good football, created chances, and in fact Al-Sari, I think it was on the left, the number 10, had a moment of absolute pure genius where he just beat about 3 Poland men with just 2 turns on the ball on the edge of the box and set up a chance for his strike partner who missed, and probably should have done better with it. But yeah, Lewandowski got the second goal of the game to completely wrap things up, and yeah, it just proved once again why he is one of the best predators in football in terms of just knowing when a defender is struggling and pouncing on it basically. And yeah, it was a well taken goal. And his first ever World Cup goal. I don't know if it's his second or third World Cup. I know he played in 2018, but I can't remember if Poland qualified in Brazil 2014. I've got a feeling they didn't, so it might just be his second World Cup. But yeah, I mean, there are very few players who deserve to score a World Cup goal more than Robert Lewandowski with the career he's had. And you could see how much it meant to him. It meant an absolute lot to him. Because he was nearly on the verge of tears after he scored, so it meant that much to him. And yeah, that pretty much wrapped the game up. Saudi Arabia, to sum it up, dominated possession, but Poland had the better chances because Saudi Arabia, once they got forward, they did, leave quite a few gaps in behind. And I don't think the injuries that they suffered, Saudi Arabia, in the first game helped them really, because there were 1 or 2 key players missing from their 11 in this game, so that would have definitely not been in favour of them. But yeah, Poland, good performance, and they probably have a good chance right now getting through the group. Poland on 4 points. I know they've got Argentina in the last game, but they can definitely do it. And then Argentina beat Mexico by 2-0 in a really tough game to watch, especially the first half. Mexico just didn't let Argentina have a minute or like a second on the ball without any sort of pressure on them. It was a really tough, hard-working performance from Mexico. There was lots of tactical fouls, and the game really had very little flow and even less quality to it in the first half. And I think Argentina, Lionel Scaloni, to be specific, I thought he made too many changes to the team to the first game, because Argentina, the first half against Saudi Arabia, weren't that bad. It was just that 10-minute spell where everything went wrong, and then they just couldn't get a goal, and Saudi Arabia defended well. So the only changes I would have really made was I would have brought Lisandro Martinez in and Alexis McAllister in for Rodrigo de Paul, because I thought Paredes was the better midfielder in the first game, and de Paul had a poor game again against Mexico. So I would have dropped him personally, and I would have also dropped either Romero or Otamendi. Either would do, but Scaloni went for Romero. And yeah, there were just so many scrappy and soft fouls early on, no rhythm whatsoever. And I think what we're going to see with Argentina this tournament is they're a decent side, but Lionel Messi can no longer carry them the way he used to be able to, like in 2014 when he virtually all by himself got them through the group stages and round of 16. So yeah, it's going to be difficult for them to get far in this tournament. I predicted them as my winners pre-tournament because they went 36 games unbeaten, but looking back at that now, how on earth did they go that long unbeaten, this team? I say Messi can't carry them though, but he definitely proved me wrong in the second half, and he is, in my opinion, the greatest footballer of all time. What a goal, just out of completely nothing. Although, what I do have to say though, is even though Messi had a quiet first half, and you know, he's obviously not the player he was, why on earth, if you're Mexico, if you've defended well for the first hour of the game nearly, why on earth do you leave a player as magic as he is on the ball, as brilliant as he is, the greatest of all time on the ball? Why on earth would you leave him 5 yards space on his own, free on the edge of the box? I cannot comprehend what would make you think that would be an okay decision. Messi takes the shot, scores. The GOAT's going to do what's the GOAT's going to do. Let's put it that way. And Mexico's game plan was going really well up until that point. Okay, they were lacking like quality all over their team, but they were stopping Argentina from creating chances. Like, there were very few chances. Messi had a free kick which sailed over the bar, but other than that, there was virtually nothing from Argentina for the first hour of the game because Mexico managed to prevent them from creating anything. And yeah, Argentina, the problem is they've got a lack of quality in midfield. However, they brought on a young lad, Enzo Fernandez, for the final 15 minutes of the game, I think, and he showed what he can do. Messi plays the ball into him just inside the box. He cuts inside his man and whips it into the far corner. Brilliant goal. He's got to start the next game purely for that moment of quality alone, because that's one thing Argentina have lacked in midfield, quality, and they need some in midfield. They've got Di Maria and Messi and Lautaro Martinez and Julian Alvarez in attack. Okay, Alvarez and Martinez haven't performed very well in the minutes they've had this World Cup so far, but at least, you know, there's quality there. In midfield, they are lacking that, in especially deeper midfield. So they need to have him starting in the next game, in my opinion. The scoreline 2-0 to Argentina definitely flattered them. It wasn't like Mexico really deserved anything out of the game, but it was just Argentina created very few chances. And on another day, that could have been another frustrating result for Argentina, I think. Just looking at my notes to see if I've missed anything. Yeah, a battle would be the correct word to describe this game, I think. And then in Group E, Costa Rica provided probably one of the shock results of the tournament, because Japan obviously beating Germany being a shock result, everyone expected a bit more from them. But yeah, they decided, Japan, or the manager decided, to keep some of his best players, some of his game changers against Germany on the bench again. Like especially players like Minamino, Mitoma and Asano. I think Tomiyasu had taken a knock, so that's understandable. But yeah, weird choice. They were the dominant side early on, Japan, but very few shots in the first half from either team, really. Costa Rica, they just didn't really go forward that much. They sort of seemed to be playing for their own pride and playing for the draw, and they knew their best chance of scoring was trying to get free kicks in the Japanese half and whip them into the box, because obviously Japan lack height, and Costa Rica do have a few players who could get on the end of a few crosses. But yeah, they were struggling to get set pieces, to be honest. They were that sat deep in their own half. It really was a dull first half. Both goalkeepers, Gonda for Japan and Keylor Navas for Costa Rica, with virtually no saves to make. I don't think there was any, really. The second half, Japan, they went out a lot more attacking. In the second half, they made a substitution, bringing Asano on. That seemed to make an impact. It gave them a little bit more energy going forward, and at one point they just had Costa Rica pinned right back in their own box, virtually, and started to create chances with the change of players and slight changes to system as well. And the Japanese manager seemed to be doing this thing where he would bring one of his attacking players off the bench every 5 minutes or so, almost trying to sort of confuse the Costa Rica defence based on, like, okay, we think we've got this position covered. Oh, well, if this player comes on, then maybe he'll do something different. Oh no, what do we do in this situation? But it didn't seem to work. Costa Rica just had that many men back that anything Japan sort of threw at them, they dealt with, really. So it didn't really work, that tactic from the Japanese manager. Although I thought Costa Rica did have, well, there was a slight bit of luck for both sides, because I thought Japan were very lucky not to concede a penalty when one of their players was like almost ripping the shirt off one of the Costa Rica players from a free kick that got whipped into the box. So they got lucky that wasn't VAR checked. But also I thought Costa Rica got lucky to have Calvo stay on the pitch for a foul on Ito, because Ito, who'd only just come on the pitch, I think at that point, was about to get a shot off right on the edge of the box. And it's technically a goal scoring opportunity, because there's nobody, like, if he gets past Calvo, there's nobody in front of him, and that's a goal scoring opportunity. So for me, I think Calvo's been quite lucky there for Costa Rica not to get sent off. But the problem for Japan was it was too late almost when they threw the kitchen sink at it. The final ball was poor at times. They left their best players on the bench for the majority of the game, and it just seemed bizarre decision making when this was like a game that's must win for them if they're to make it out of this group. Now they absolutely have to win against Spain, and that doesn't seem very likely to be complete, or at the very least they need a draw and like a miracle to happen, or something like that. I'm not even sure a draw guarantees it now, but yeah, it's not looking good for them now. It was great defending from Costa Rica for the majority of the game, and when you keep yourself in the game, you never know, you might just get a chance. And yeah, Fuller got the chance, and he whipped it into the top corner with his left foot. Gonda, though, we need to talk about him. That was poor positioning from him. He's way too far off his line, and he's jumped way too early to try and save it as well. So really poor goalkeeping, I think, for one. So yeah, that cost Japan in the end. And Mitoma and Minamino, it goes without saying, they absolutely had to start. And they absolutely have to start in the next game, because as soon as they came on the pitch, you could just see a difference in quality when Japan went forward.